A very good evening to all our viewers, and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toibon Jabela, your host. Thank you for joining us on this episode where we are discussing the issue of abortion, which has, of course, made headlines in recent days and recent weeks. As a matter of fact, recent years, if you like. But last week in particular, we had a public hearing on this subject, whether to legalize abortion or not. And to discuss this with me in the studio tonight is Dr. Shirley Magazi. Sorry, Doc. Shirley Magazi. She is one of those that are advocating for the pro-life approach. In other words, abortion shouldn't be legalized. She'll explain that in a minute. And then, of course, Omar van Reenen, he is, Omar is among those who believe that he leans towards the pro-choice approach. This is to say that those that are pregnant and are willing to abort must do so at any time as they wish, that the law must provide for that. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Omar.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with you, Omar, because give me a bit of background. What is it that necessitated this movement, this call for abortion to be legalized? What is it in practical terms that has really awoken your generation to say it's time that we legalize abortion?
Yes, very much so. In the past few years, this generation has really taken a hold of our democracy.
Yeah.
But it's not like we wanted to, it's because we have to.
Yeah.
We are growing up in a time and again amongst a generation in a country where there's skyrocketing sexual and gender-based violence.
Yeah.
Where every day in the newspaper articles, women's bodily autonomy are compromised, women's reproductive justices are undermined, women and girls and transgender folks and conforming people are face severe violence, severe marginalization. And it's being reported, it's being shared, and it has become so normalized, but not for us, because this is not the republic that we want to continue growing up in. But mainly specifically on the issue of bodily autonomy, we see how there's been at a point about 7,000 unsafe abortions in Namibia. In 2008, at a Windhoek sewer and water company reported that there was an average of 13 baby dumpings every month. And those severe statistics are just, what's at the surface. But what's at the deeper level is the fact that we are living in a country where there is state-determined procreation. And what that means is that the current Abortion and Sterilization Act of 1975 mandates procreation by the state without due process of the law. And it denies women, girls, and gender non-conforming individuals a choice on when to start a family. It involves the government's interference on one's personal liberty and autonomy, and it criminalizes and penalizes pregnant persons for making their own reproductive health choices. And our generation, we are told that we are the born-free generation. Yeah. Well, what does it mean to be born-free if you are living in a country where state-determined procreation is the order of the day? Yes. What does it mean to be born-free if women and girls are still chained to the shackles of an apartheid-era law that polices their bodily autonomy? So when the Reproductive Justice March launched by the Voices for Choices and Rights Coalition, we garnered 62,000 signatures. And that is the most signatures for a petition that our born-free republic has ever witnessed. Yes. And that is not only a call to action, but that is a call to our society that the state-determined procreation is not going to be the order of the day, and that our generation wants to see a day where women and girls and transgender persons and gender non-conforming persons and pregnant persons who have unwanted pregnancies will not be held to, or will not have their bodies policed by the state.
Thank you very much. Loud and clear. Doctor, what is of course we know your stance on this matter is that you are advocating for life, of the fetus in particular. Why are you opposed to the legalization of this particular law?
Very good question. At the onset of it, we need to look at what is the law actually propagating.
Yeah.
And our law is protecting the rights of both the mother and the unborn child.
Yeah.
And is making an exception in the event that the life of the mother or the life of the unborn child is at risk. It deviates from the norm to say, in that case, you have then the right to abort this child because your health is at risk.
Yeah.
But then it also looks at what constituted the conception of this pregnancy. Was it lawful or unlawful? In the event that it was unlawful, it then again says it has put you in a difficult predicament, and therefore the state then allows you to then abort this child because it was not by choice.
Yeah.
So the current law on Abortion and Sterilization Act does not discriminate against women's choice. As a matter of fact, it puts in boundaries in terms of limitation of liberty. And the Constitution allows for that. And the reason why we are against abortion on demand, it's because it infringes on the protection of life of that unborn child, which is a constitutional right. And if like you've heard the whole issue of privacy, that the state is then infringing on the privacy of people, the Constitution provides for that. When you look at Article 9, I think, of liberty of right as well as privacy, privacy is you have privacy until such a time that it infringes or it goes against public order, it goes against decency, it goes against morality, or it goes against security, that it is a threat to that. So even the right to privacy is not an absolute right. It has limitations. And that's what we're saying. Every right that every person has a limitation. The only right that does not have a limitation is a right to life.
It's a right to life. The pro-choice movement is calling for, because you are citing the law as it is, their call is for this law to be amended. Do we just say because the law is there, therefore we leave it that way, or is there room for accommodating aspirations like this?
The question would be, why would you want to amend the law? There are formulas, or not formulas, there are principles that guides amendments of laws. So for example, if I wake up today and I have a passion that I really just have a desire to have a relationship with my father, that is what I want, and it's growing. Does that mean now that the country needs to legalize that? Because I woke up one day and I decided this is what I want, and it's becoming prevalent. Do we then decide that? What governs amendments of laws? And what is the basis upon which this law needs to be amended? And I've heard the arguments that it has to do with bodily autonomy. Bodily autonomy is not a right. Give me a legal instrument that advocates for bodily autonomy as a right. It is not a reproductive health right. It is not a human right. And the right for you to decide in terms of what to do with your body is restricted. Simply because I want to do it doesn't mean it is a right. It is an implied right. And so because it is an implied right, we need to look at concrete rights that actually we are basing our behavior on. And I really want to get the justification of why we would want to amend the current law, except for the bodily right one, a bodily autonomy. It is not justifiable.
I hear you. Omar, do you want to respond to anything specific?
Yes,
she said?
I'd like to.
Yes.
All right, so I would like to touch on the first that the current law protects the life of the mother. The current law actually does not. So let me more accurately dissect what the current law is and how it implicates women and girls in this country. So there are only 4 cases where you can have an abortion in this country. One is if the continued pregnancy endangers the life of the woman physically, if it endangers the mental health of the woman, if there exists a serious risk that when the fetus is born, that there is a mental or physical defect, and also if the fetus is alleged to have been conceived as a result of rape, okay, or incest. Now, for each of those 4 cases, there are different steps, but I'm not going to call those steps. I'm going to call those barriers which constitute an undue burden onto the person who has an unwanted pregnancy seeking an abortion. So for each of those 4 cases, these are the following steps to obtain an abortion. For rape and incest, you need a certificate from a magistrate's court. Then you also need 2 medical practitioners to give you permission to get an abortion. A medical practitioner needs to give you a permission to get an abortion for rape, and a magistrate needs to give you a certificate to get a permission for an abortion. But now, if you look at who are these medical practitioners that are eligible, there's even more barriers to that. Both medical practitioners must be registered. At least one of the doctors must have been practicing for 2 years. 2 of the doctors must not be practicing in the same partnership or working for the same employer, and neither of the doctors who give the certificate can perform the abortion. And then there's additional barriers too. If you're underage, you need a parent or a guardian to give you permission, or the Minister of Gender. And then if you're going to seek an abortion because it constitutes a threat to your mental health, you need a certificate from a psychiatrist, of which we know there aren't enough in this country, and there aren't enough psychiatrists widespread, accessible enough throughout this country as well. So those barriers do not make the abortion under those cases accessible to women who are seeking abortion. In fact, that is the reason why more than 500 women die from unsafe abortion in this country. There is nothing pro-life about allowing 500 Namibian women to die because of restrictive abortion laws. 62% of the world's unsafe abortions happen in Africa because we have the most restrictive abortion laws. That's approximately 29,000 African women, Black African women, who are dying because of unsafe abortion. There's nothing pro-life about that. This law does not only constitute a threat to women, but it also criminalizes women. It stigmatizes women. That's not pro-life. And then to the second point, that the law does not discriminate, of course it does. This law is an apartheid-era law. It is not a law written and enacted by a democratically elected Namibian people or representatives of the Namibian people. It was enacted by a white supremacist regime who wrote the law to maintain white legacy and to maintain white offspring, so that because they were afraid that the Black population would outnumber them during apartheid. And that also because they knew that women were going to England during that time to seek abortion. Now we have women who have the financial privilege to go to South Africa to seek the abortion, while Black poor women are dying because of unsafe abortions because they do not have the financial privilege to go to South Africa, a country who has overthrew their apartheid law, while Namibia, who inherited this law from the South African apartheid regime, still maintains it in a born-free Namibia. So not only does it discriminate based on our democracy, but also racially as well. Because if you look at the numbers, who are the people most affected? Poor Black women in this country. To the point of the fetus does not has a constitutional right. It does not. The Constitution does not mention the fetus. The Constitution does not give the right to life to a fetus? And if so, okay, so then what about the fertility clinics in Namibia? If a sperm fertilizes an egg and that needs to be discharged, that's unconstitutional, because that growing cells that becomes a fetus, that's then murder, according to what the doctor has said. And then look at what's happening with the current cases of abortion, where you can get abortion. Isn't that then murder and then unconstitutional? So it's a double standard argument. But the Constitution does protect the life of the mother first and foremost. And the abortion debate constitutes 3 Ps: public, private, and practitioners. The state-determined procreation, which is a result from this abortion law, denies practitioners their mandate to protect the life of the mother first. So that is also unconstitutional in and of itself. And then let's look at what the Supreme Court said about bodily autonomy, which is protected by the Constitution. Courts have placed an emphasis on individual liberty and the protection of privacy, which encompasses bodily autonomy. Privacy is bodily autonomy. And this is what the Supreme Court said in ES versus AC 2015. Individual free choice and self-determination are themselves fundamental constituents of life. Bodily autonomy is a right, and it is a right we are going to protect in this born-free republic.
Doctor, the figures, the official figures, are showing us that, of course, there are women who have conducted these backyard abortions and elsewhere, and they've risked their lives, and a lot of them have died. How are we going to navigate around this reality? Because it's there, it's true.
Let me perhaps first of all start to give accurate information, to demystify this whole misinformation that is being given to our people. First of all, there is no such thing as an apartheid law. Article 140 of our Constitution says that whatever law existed before we inherit it, okay, for purposes of state continuity, until such a time that it is regarded as unconstitutional or it is repealed because it contradicts the Constitution. So does our current law contradict the Constitution? No. So we're playing with the minds of people to try and say, yeah, it was an apartheid law, to say that it was discriminating against women and black women and white women. How? Because it does not say that only black women should abort. It does not say that only white women should continue. It baffles me. It really baffles me that we want to step that low to misinform people about this law. This law looked at what is at the current, whether it was white men or white women or black men or whoever came up with it. We need to look at the object of the law. And what was the object of the law? The object of the law is to provide boundaries within which abortion may be legalized and may be procured. In this case, and the whole issue of access, the argument then is the barriers that the law is providing is not a legal issue. It is an implementational issue. We simply need to take that law and say, okay, fine, how are we going to implement it? It's not a legal debate. Okay, it's not. The fact that you have to go to a doctor, the fact that you have these processes in place doesn't make it a legal issue. So if the issue is that the current people that are able to procure an abortion legally in the country, that there are barriers that they are facing, then it is a totally different conversation, because that is not legalizing abortion on demand. That is looking at how do we facilitate in terms of making it easier for women to access these services. That is not a legal issue. It is an operational issue. So we really need to play open cards and classify issues at its rightful place. Coming on with the statistics, I'm really and truly, again, baffled by our statistics. I want you to tell me the source of these statistics that say 7,000 a year. This is accumulator figures, okay? And please, this accumulator figure was recorded by the Minister Osiko that time. That is many years ago. I think it was 2016. By that time, he said it's 7,000. Accumulative. So we are trying to tell people and misinform the nation that 7,000 people, women are dying every year. And then we come up with 500,000 people are dying. The statistics I have, and please, I want Ministry of Health, if they did a study on it, tell us where it is. The current WHO statistics for Namibia says the following. Maternal death due to abortion is 5%. We are exaggerating. And I know why people want to exaggerate. We want to exaggerate. Pro-choice would want to exaggerate so that we can say it is a serious public concern. 5%. 5% dying because of abortion. And watch this. It is not all an induced abortion. Some of it is spontaneous abortion. And spontaneous abortion is miscarriage. The problem, the highest problem that Namibia has is we have a problem with ectopic pregnancies that leads to the death of these women. So if it is really an issue that we need to look at, we need to look at the ectopic pregnancies that leads to death of women that are pregnant, not the abortion, backdoor abortion issue. Now let's come to the backdoor abortion issue. Are we saying, is pro-choice saying that legalizing abortion on demand is going to reduce unsafe abortion? Clearly, statistic tells us otherwise. As a matter of fact, in countries like South Africa, it has shot up 60%. Statistics. It has shot up in all countries that abortion has been legalized on demand. That tells us that abortion on demand, legalizing abortion on demand is not the answer to address unsafe abortion. What then is the answer? I'll come back to that. There's the other of bodily autonomy, that is a right, it is a reproductive health right, and so forth. UNFPA, one of the proponents for bodily autonomy, they define a bodily autonomy that it is about the right. The minute that you say it is about the right to make a decision over their future and the choices you would want to make, doesn't make it a right. They actually say it is a universal value. So there's currently no instrument that says bodily autonomy, international instrument that says bodily autonomy is a reproductive health right. We need to be very clear on that. Let us not misinform our people. Yes, you have the right to make choices about your body in the confines of the law. So restriction will always be there. Let's look at South Africa. South Africa has done away with this abortion law. Why? Their constitution is very clear. We may be sharing economic similarities and so many other similarities. What Namibia does not share with South Africa is its social philosophy and ideologies. The Constitution of South Africa gives the right and promotes reproductive health, bodily autonomy, and so forth. So based on their constitution, they had to then change the laws so that it speaks to their constitution. Namibia does not, and let's not read into the law. We should not read into the law. Namibia constitution, let's not read into the constitution. The Namibian constitution does not explicitly speak about bodily autonomy as a right. As a matter of fact, when it speaks, and I'll repeat it again, when it speaks of the right to privacy, which is what you were talking of. Now let's dissect that. Take a child, okay? Take a 15-year-old child that has the right to their body. No, let's not even go to 15, let's go to 12, because you want the kids at 12 years old to be aborting. Let's take 12 years old. It's your body, right? It's your right. When you have sexual intercourse, you do it within the confines of your privacy. However, it is illegal. Why? because it infringes on decency and morality. But it is your body. It is the body of the 12-year-old child. Our laws say that consent for sexual intercourse has been reduced now to 14 years. Why do we have this? It is to demonstrate that though you have certain rights, though you have individual rights, you need to apply utilitarianism. And utilitarianism looks at the benefit of society. It is those things that looks at what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
That is not acceptable.
Yeah, let me end at that.
We'll go on a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with this exciting and lively conversation.
Hello, Namibia. Big Ben here. If you have been vaccinated against COVID-19, then sharp, you're doing the most. But if not, please join me in Opuo on the 26th of October and at Chuarongo on the 10th of November at a dedicated vaccination center. And we're going to talk about it and find a way to kick COVID out of Namibia. My Namibia, my country, my pride. See you there.
Strike it gold and win 5,000 Namibian dollars in cash with Neo Paints. Simply buy Neo Paints products from the selected range and stand a chance to get one of 12 mystery buckets filled with gold paint. All 12 winners will each get 3 extra paint buckets equal to their purchase. One to replace the gold paint, the second to use on your project, and the third to give to a charity of their choice. One winner can score another 10,000 Namibian dollars by showing us your creative use of the golden paint. The best project wins the cash. Offer is valid from 27 September to 18 December at your favorite hardware store nationwide. Visit us at neopaints.com for more competition details and follow us on Facebook for weekly competition updates. Neopaints, a coat of excellence.
We continue our conversation here with Omar and Shirley. Omar, give me an ideal situation where it is necessary to abort a baby outside the confines that we currently have in law now, to say yes, incest, yes, rape, yes, medical complications. What other idealistic circumstances would allow, would lead to someone wanting to have their baby aborted?
Those circumstances are not for me to determine, and that is our whole argument. We need to make sure that those who have unwanted pregnancies have access to safe and legal abortion, that they are not criminalized, that they are not marginalized, and that they are not ostracized. Are you asking
for that.
how we want the law?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just good that you mentioned, something just popped out of my mind now when you said what you just said now. Unwanted pregnancies, what are those?
Right. So,
What makes a pregnancy unwanted? Of course, again, like I said, we have those that are now defined in law. But what else would make a pregnancy not wanted?
right. Okay. So the cases right now that determine the abortion, people mainly say that those are the only circumstances that a woman should have an unwanted pregnancy. But it's really not for me to also to determine what makes a pregnancy unwanted. It's up to the person who is pregnant. If it's not the right time that they want to start a family, that is an unwanted pregnancy. If the pregnancy was conceived not on their own accord or on their own decision, then that is an unwanted pregnancy. But again, I'm not going to use this position, especially as someone who does not identify as a woman, to determine what is an unwanted pregnancy and what is not. I'm mainly here to make sure that I advocate for those that do find themselves in a position where they have an unwanted pregnancy, that in this country, that we all form part of, that they have access to make sure that they get an abortion safely and that they get an abortion legally. And that is why we want to amend the law in the following ways. We want to make sure that this law gets repealed and replaced, and that the abortion should be permitted on request in the first trimester of pregnancy without any need of approval of doctors, psychiatrists, magistrates, courts, or whatnot. And also that victims of rape and incest should not be required to provide any documentation to obtain an abortion, and that women between 13 and 20 weeks of gestation should be able to obtain an abortion if a medical practitioner believes that the pregnancy threatens the mental or physical health of the woman or the fetus. And after the 20th week of gestation, termination of pregnancy should be permissible if a doctor or a trained midwife finds that the continuation of the pregnancy would threaten the health of the woman. So in the first trimester, it is more liberalized, the law that we would like to amend, and then in the second and third, it becomes more regulated, but not restricted. And that is the whole point of this. It's not to make abortion like free for all. And by the way, if abortion becomes legalized, that doesn't mean that more people are going to seek abortion now. That is only gaslighting the situation. But if abortion does become legalized, the amount of unsafe abortions will decrease, and the cost on the healthcare system will also decrease, because unsafe abortion constitutes a serious burden on the healthcare system and a serious financial burden on the taxpayer as well, because of the complications that come from it. Women that you literally have to drink chemicals, women that have to go in back alleys and get hangers to abort. They end up in the healthcare system, and then it strains the healthcare system, and it's up to the taxpayer. And usually we hear the arguments also from the pro-life side that taxpayers shouldn't be funding this. One, taxpayers already fund abortions, because abortions can only happen in state institutions, because the government has not approved any private institution to perform abortions. And also, again, taxpayers are already funding abortions, whether they're safe or unsafe, through funding unsafe abortions, because they end up in the state system again from the complications too. And I do want to just make a remark on what the doctor said. The doctor said that 5% of, it's only 5% of unsafe abortions, or will people? Yes. So if that's the statistics that you're going to use, and if you're going to say that that's not a serious public health concern, that's very disheartening, especially from a point of view that argues on a morality basis. 5% is 5% too many. Even if there is 1% or one woman dying in this country from unsafe abortion, that is one woman too many. And that cannot continue to happen in this country. The highest problem we have is the unsafe abortion, and it does come from this apartheid law. And it is an apartheid law because it's inherited from the apartheid system. The objects of that law, like I said, was white supremacy. And even in a born-free republic, we see that the disproportionate impacts of that law are on poor black women. And the preamble of the Constitution does protect bodily autonomy, because the preamble of the Constitution states the following: that the Republic of Namibia recognizes inherent human dignity, not a fetus, equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. What is dignity in Article 8? It says that a person will not be subjected to cruel and inhumane and degrading treatment. What is cruel treatment? Criminalizing women for unsafe abortion. What is inhumane treatment? Stigmatizing women for unsafe abortion. And what is degrading treatment? Locking up women for unsafe abortion. And talking about locking up, between 2018 and 2021, there has been 124 cases of concealment of birth. That means that 124 women were locked up in our criminal justice system because they do not have access to their bodily autonomy. That is not respect for human dignity, and that is not respecting what our preamble aspires towards.
Okay. So thank you, Omar, again for your submission. Doctor, I'm sure you might want to say some things to react to some of these things, but along with that, I want to ask you, is there such thing as, in your vocabulary, as unwanted pregnancy? Is there such thing as inconvenient pregnancy? And if yes, how are those supposed to be dealt with from your perspective?
Thank you very much for your question. At the onset, I think there's a lot of misinformation that's taking place with the purpose of deceiving people.
Yeah.
Every law in this world, as a matter of fact, because you have restrictions on abortion, automatically you are criminalizing women that do not fall within the perimeters of procuring legal abortion.
Yeah.
Okay. The proposed amendments to the abortion speak very directly to what South Africa has. South Africa also, like you have heard of what is being proposed to amend, it is within the first 13 weeks liberal. You don't have to justify. Thereafter, it becomes restrictive and also criminalizing. So you will never do away with criminalizing people if they break the law. What is the purpose of law? Law is supposed to promote positive behavior. Law is supposed to dictate to us what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Law is supposed to tell us what is a preferred conduct of behavior. The minute that you act beyond that, the standards, then it becomes a crime. It becomes unlawful. So let's take practically what is being proposed. A woman, therefore, that does not abort within the first 13 weeks, okay, according to what is being proposed and within South Africa as well, and does not fall within the criteria of health being a risk to them. Because what you must understand, again, with the South African law, all they have done, they've kept what we have. All they have done is they've just included the 13 weeks that you can do it without any justification. So the minute that you go beyond 13 weeks and you now decide, I don't want to keep this pregnancy, and it has not a health risk to you or the baby, and you continue to do it, it becomes an illegal abortion. Then it is a crime. That means with your bodily autonomy, you need then to go to jail. Bottom line. So what are we saying? All we are saying is that Namibia is saying that, look, in the presence of or within the confines of our social order, we have no problem with this so-called apartheid era law because it has become our law. The question we need to ask is, does it speak to our realities? Does it speak to our needs? Again, I will ask, what is it that you are trying to address in legalizing abortion on demand? If it is unsafe abortion, statistics shows us that it does not address that. If it is a matter of deaths, and it's unfortunate that we do not understand what governs the principles of public health. Yes, 5 is too many. But does that warrant a public health concern? There are principles that guide public health. And of the principles that guide public health is that whatever the issue is should be of a significant proportion that affects the majority of it. 5% compared to the entire does not fall within that. Does that make us then discriminatory? No. There are guiding principles that guide our public health approach. And let's get to the public health approach in terms of unwanted pregnancy. Is there something like unwanted pregnancies? And let me just give an excerpt from laws that we currently have that governments are obliged to. According to the International Conference on Population and Development, it states that governments should take appropriate steps to help women avoid abortion. It is a preventative approach that governments are being asked to do. Furthermore, which in no case should be promoted as a method of family planning. So in our country, do we have laws that speak to unwanted pregnancy? And what is unwanted pregnancy? If you do not want a pregnancy, then you can protect yourself from not wanting the pregnancy, right? Because my thinking, I would say, would be a pregnancy is unwanted because it was not intended. I suppose that would be the reason. I really do not understand this whole concept of unwanted pregnancy. So if we say it stems from the fact that it was unintended, it was not planned. Our policies currently in country, we have a family planning policy. Family planning is a reproductive health right. It is a reproductive health care. It is a right to women. What is it saying? And often what people advocate for bodily autonomy is that I must choose when I want to have a pregnancy, how often I want to have it, and if I want to have it. Now, what policies and laws speak to that is our family planning. Our family planning empowers women to say, okay, fine. Do I want a pregnancy? No. Go for family planning. Plan for your family. Take the contraceptives that you need to take to prevent that. And then if you decide that I want to have it, then you get off it and then you have it. So we have laws in place that empowers women to decide when they want to be pregnant, when not to be pregnant. So are we saying that it is not enough? Furthermore,
Doc, do you know that, of course, even planning itself can fail. You've planned it, or you really never planned it. Can you now be penalized just because you never planned for it? You fell pregnant.
You fell pregnant. Does that mean that you did not protect yourself?
It could mean that.
Okay. So if you did not protect yourself, there are consequences, right? And should we now take away the consequences? And I will again bring this whole thing. If I decide to have unprotected sex, and I get HIV, it's a consequence. It is a consequence like getting pregnant. And what is the approach of state currently? Let us give you the services that helps you through this consequence of yours. Because we have put in place a preventative approach. And again, if you say that we should legalize abortion because to deal with unwanted pregnancies, then we are saying actually abortion is a family planning method.
Yeah. We'll go for a quick break again, and then we'll come back for the last stretch of the show. We continue our conversation. Omar, I'm sure you might, I saw you were reacting on the sideline to Shirley earlier on, but you can react after, or together with this question. The one thing that I personally posted on social media during this very important public hearing was to say, a baby is a product of essentially two people, that pregnancy. Where does the right of a father feature anyway? Of course, it's not the father's body that carries the baby if we are now using the bodily autonomy argument. But as a father, will I be accommodated anywhere in the proposed law, just to also have, not to decide necessarily for the woman, but to have a say?
That conversation with the partners, but the choice ultimately is rested in the person who is carrying the pregnancy. So the choice fundamentally stays there, but the collective decision can be in consultation with both of them. But let me just say this. If the question is going to be, which parent gets to take the final decision on whether or not to abort the fetus, let me put an analogy here. Between Namibia and the apartheid administration, who was the parent and who was the child? And if let's say the apartheid administration was the parent and Namibia was the child, then the parent was very abusive, very oppressive, and the one that puts the law into effect was that parent. And so it should be Namibia, the child, that decides what the Constitution should uphold. And in that case, it should then be the woman to decide on her reproductive right and autonomy. And if I may just return very quickly to a few points that the doctor had made. Again, to just say it's very disheartening to belittle the public health concern that's happening in the country, and it doesn't speak to the reality that's happening in this country. The doctor is saying that the system is there for you, the system's going to foster you, the system's going to help you, the confines of the law are there to promote positive behavior. The system has failed us. It has failed our generation. It has failed women. It has failed girls in this country. 4,000 learners in 2020 alone fell pregnant. 2,300 had to drop out. Let me backtrack. 4,000 girls were statutorily raped in this country. Is that not a public health concern? Is that not a crisis? Is that not a bodily autonomy crisis in this country?
But that provision is catered for in law currently, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. But now, look at what happens. The week of the public abortion hearings, there was a police report that a grade 11 student was locked up because it was found that she aborted, and unsafely perhaps. So again, she had to resort to that means, and now she's sitting in prison because of the criminalization of this law, because of the existence of this law, because of the restrictions of access to abortion in this country. And the social order is broken. This law is not maintaining it. And back also to the system, we see that social workers even are raping people who are girls who are supposed to come to seek assistance by the ministry as well. I do not trust the system. How are women supposed to as well in this country? So the doctor also alludes to international, very, very, very proudly alludes to international treaties and regulations, as we should, because Article 144 says that we have an obligation to ratify and adhere to international laws which we have signed. And that is also how our country was birthed out of the international community. So what does the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women call for? And the CEDAW committee said that, which is the monitoring body for the treaty, has repeatedly made it clear that it considers restrictive abortion laws incompatible with the human rights of women. And I hope that that is a treaty that the doctor also can parade in future discussions. And lastly, on the point of family planning, yes, abortion is a form of family planning. And my argument rests that abortion is not going to be used as a form of contraception. That should be demystified as well. We already have these mechanisms to prevent unwanted pregnancies. But look, even the government ran out of condoms, but now the doctor is putting the blame on us, while the doctor is also saying believe and trust in the system. And recently, too, the government ran out of contraceptives too, but trust the system. But abortion is a part of family planning, and it is under the umbrella of sexual reproductive health and rights. And it is another means to healthcare, not another means to contraceptives. We are talking about another form of family planning that can be affordable, accessible, legal, and safe for every woman in this born-free country.
Doc, you alluded earlier to the South African law that deals with abortion, and you said, if I understood you correctly, that everything is almost the same as Namibia, except for the number of weeks that one has to be pregnant before they may be legally allowed to terminate that pregnancy. Is that something that can be replicated here, or you were saying even for that period that is permissible in South Africa to abort, that shouldn't be replicated here?
Exactly what we are saying. It should not be replicated here. The question again goes back, what is it that we want to address? Yeah. A law is supposed to address something. What is very unfortunate is that we are confusing matters. You're talking of women, of girls that fell pregnant last year because of no condoms that were there and because of rape and so forth. The law makes provision for if a woman was raped to get the abortion. That is very clear. Let's not confuse matters. Again, we are saying that the girl's high teenage pregnancy that has resulted and so forth and so forth. Then at the same time, we are saying that abortion is a family planning method. That is a gross error. A very gross error that I need the pro-choice to rectify. Because internationally, the very proponents of abortion say, please, let it not be seen as a method of family planning. It appears that in Namibia, our pro-choice group sees it as a family planning method. That is a gross error. It goes against exactly what the international people and our governments want to avoid. But then in Namibia, we want to see it as a family planning. That is very problematic. The issue of our constitution that does not speak of the fetus and everything, let me just read for us the children's rights. Children's rights begin before birth and after birth. The preamble of the Convention of the Rights of the Child says the child, by reason of his physical and mental immaturity, needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before as well as after birth. Why would we want to subject a child to a woman, with all due respect, and it is not belittling a woman? Why do we want to subject the life of a child? Because the life of the child is now an inconvenience to a woman. Why would we want to do that? We are contradicting matters. Here we are saying everyone is equal before the law, the Constitution. But now we want to say, no. The unborn child is not so equal as the mother. Why? Because they're still dependent upon the mother. Bodily autonomy is autonomy, the right over your own body. That child may be in your body, but it's not part of your body. Scientifically, it has been proven. That's why that child has a different DNA. That's why that child has a different blood type. Yep. Everything within the child shows it is within you, but it is not of you. Now, let's see what is, and addressing the whole issue of apartheid and whether it still speaks to us. Let's look at current laws that we have put in place to really respect life. If we take the protection of wildlife, wildlife is protected, endangered species are protected to such a degree that even any part, any specimen of it is regarded as illegal. Are we saying that plants as well as animals, specimens of it are more important than, for argument's sake, a specimen that has the ability to grow into a human being? Is that what we're saying? If we are saying that a fetus is but just another thing. So clearly you can see the value that we put on protection of life. It even goes down to plants and animals. Why not to that unborn child? That every law, internationally and within our country, protects the child before birth and after birth. That is the convention of the child's right. And simply because you as a woman have the right, and abortion is not a right. We need to clarify that. And again, that is why, on what basis would you want to legalize abortion? Abortion is not a right.
Not the right. Okay.
Abortion on demand.
Yeah. So I think in the interest of time, Omar, please say what you want to say, and then just wrap up your side of the argument.
Yes. So on the point of there is provisions. Yes. I mentioned the cases you can get abortions and the steps for those cases. Those are the provisions that the doctor is alluding to. As I've mentioned, those provisions are barriers. They are inaccessible. They create undue burden for women. And that is why we have such a high number of unsafe abortions in this country. As the previous Minister of Health reported, in 1 year it was 7,000. As I've said, that we've seen that it's 500 women that die from unsafe abortions. The convention is not the Constitution. The Constitution does not recognize the right of a fetus. The Constitution recognizes the right of the mother. Are we saying that the right of the mother and the life of the mother must be put aside because a fetus comes first? A fetus cannot grow if the mother isn't there. A fetus cannot grow outside of the mother. We have to protect the life of the mother first. That's why practitioners are mandated to take care of their patients first before a fetus. And then in wrapping up, I will say this, that there is virtually no other law in this country that polices women's bodily autonomy like the abortion law. And there is virtually no law in this country that polices a man's body like this abortion law does. It is not equal, and in that case, it does also discriminate. This is the civil rights issue of our time. And while abortion may not be a right, we are sure going to fight for it to be as a born-free generation. Because I will not continue to live in a country where I continue to see all these figures going up and no solutions being brought to the table, no policy changes being brought to the table, while girls are being statutorily raped, while we have rocketing SGBV in this country. So this is a civil rights issue of our generation and of our time. During the apartheid era, the civil rights issue was racial justice. And nobody asked the liberationists why they had to fight for independence, because they just had to. It was a fundamental right, and it was a fundamental obligation to liberate all people of this country. And that is why, to pay homage to that and to what our Constitution aspires to, we have to eliminate, repeal, and replace the Abortion and Sterilization Act of 1975.
Thank you, Omar. Doctor, your last throw of the dice.
The Constitution of Namibia is very clear. Protection, the protection of life, the right to life shall be respected and protected. It does not discriminate against women, men, or children. Children, whether born or unborn. It is appalling to hear that the Constitution doesn't speak of the fetus. It encompasses life. So it is for the pro-choice to prove that this unborn child, called a fetus, is not alive. It is in biology that we learn that there are different stages of development of life. If it is different stages of development of life, that means at every point of it, it is life. Nothing dead can grow into life. Common sense. So a fetus is a living organism that is growing into a fully fledged human being. The Constitution also protects for incompetent people. For example, an incompetent person in this case would be the unborn child, because they do not have the ability to defend their right. An incompetent person that is in the ICU, that is on life support, do not have the ability to protect their right. But the Constitution protects them.
Yes.
Whether or not you are dependent upon somebody else for survival does not deny you the right. There is what we call passive rights and active rights. Immunity, protection to life, falls in the category of passive rights. A fetus, an unborn child, has that right. May not be active because they're not the ones enacting it, they're not the ones that are propagating for it, but it is a passive right in the sense that the state is obliged to protect them. And our Constitution is very clear. We uphold life at every developmental stage of life. If that was not the case, then we need to clarify our Constitution. And human dignity, that child has a right to human dignity. Abortion is torture to that child.
Yeah.
The article the doctor is bringing up is Article 6, Protection of Life. And the framers of the Constitution wrote that to eliminate death sentences and executions in this country, not to protect a fetus, or they would have put that into the Constitution as well. So I just wanted to also clarify that point there too.
Cannot then apply it to women's rights, that they have the right to be protected, because the context in that is exactly going back again, liberty. And if we read liberty, it says according to procedures established by law. Again, liberty is restricted. No person shall be deprived of personal liberty except it's restrictive. It is not absolute. We need to be very clear.
I think it's, every party has really come to the party today. You have put vigorous, compelling arguments. It was not a contestation of who wins or who loses, but to really have a conversation as a country in our diversity. So thank you very much, Dr. Magazi, for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Omar, thank you for your, please continue doing what you're doing. Well, you are inspiring, I'm sure, a lot of young people.
Thank you very
So I
much.
appreciate it.
Liberation
Should you not also motivate me for doing what we do?
No.
As a woman, I'm speaking as a woman,
for-
advocating for
No, definitely.
women's rights.
It's self-evident. It's self-evident, doctor. Whether I say it or not, it's clear. So thanks a lot.
Just pulling your leg.
Yeah, sure. That was the agenda for tonight. Thank you for watching and have a lovely evening.